Hey, Boomers. Welcome to This Boomer Life with your host, Michelle Parrish Zuniga. And today's guest is Frank Herch, who has an amazing background. And I'll just tell you a little bit, and Frank will tell us a lot more.
Yeah.
So he was a civil rights attorney, a legal librarian. He's received tons of awards. He spent 11 years in Israel. I'd like to hear a little about that. He has a business called the Record Mensch. He sings, he acts, and I want to talk to him a little about his spiritual journey. So we have a lot ahead of us in the next half hour.
I'm
Frank,
grateful to be here.
welcome. Pardon?
I'm grateful to be here and have the opportunity. I
Oh,
speak at the drop of a hat. So be
well,
given an opportunity to talk about my background, my life, my experiences, I cherish this type of opportunity.
all right. Well, what would you like to tell us about your background as a lawyer?
Well, I'm a University of California product. University of California, Davis for 2 undergraduate bachelors, sociology and history. My law degree, I have a master's of library science from UC Berkeley. So I basically was a law librarian the majority of my career, working in courthouse law libraries, county law libraries, federal law libraries such as Department of Interior, Department of Commerce, Federal Communications Commission, Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, and NASA. And my dog just got in my door,
Oh, that's all right. We
but
can we
he's
can
quiet and good.
accommodate we can
He's a good
accommodate your
dog.
dog.
Okay. Um, and so as an attorney, I practiced law out of Oakland, California. People know where the Grand Lake Theater is. My office was a block from the Grand Lake Theater near on Lake Merritt, the great Art Deco movie theater of Oakland, California. And my practice was mostly civil rights, employment discrimination. My clients were basically like George Floyd's parents, so I was dealing with police brutality. I had an incredible expert who had written the one of the first police department manuals that covered chokeholds, but he would never testify against the Oakland police. He
Hmm.
would testify against every other county or city police agency, and there are nearly a dozen in a 60-75 mile radius of Oakland. So I was pursuing this type of police misconduct litigation in Contra Costa County, Marin County, San Francisco. I was doing jury trials in San Francisco when they allowed the attorneys to do the voir dire of the jury. Now, currently in federal court, you have to submit questions, and the judge antiseptically asks your questions of the jurors. But when you
Oh,
were
really?
able to talk directly to the jurors, it was like the old Perry Mason show. You are
Well,
talking directly, you're asking questions, you're ascertaining, you're looking at their misdemeanor. And I hate to say, my expert was so handsome, so tall. I put as many females as I could on every jury, and they loved this guy. He was 6'6". He looked like Magnum PI. He had a big belt buckle, big cowboy boots, was articulate. But like I said, he would never testify against the Oakland Police Department, where he wrote their manual. But nevertheless, he was fantastic, a just wonderful expert. And I guess lawyers dream of growing up to be a good lawyer and having great experts in some field of expertise. I never
mhm.
dreamt mine was going to end up being police misconduct in the San Francisco Bay Area, which also meant, I'll back up a little and tell you, I was introduced to this field by being called in as the lead researcher on what turned out to be the $14 million judgment against the city of Richmond, which
Wow.
involved attorneys Oliver Jones, and Melvin Belli was even involved in the Richmond case. And I was the one doing all the lead research, pulling out all the cases that applied to what we were litigating. And, so I was the research arm of a tremendous effort to deal with decades of misconduct against a particular community in Richmond, California. They actually lived in an area that was called Dog Patch, which had one
No.
means of egress and one means of ingress, one
Oh
way
my.
in, one way out of a neighborhood that was fraught with crime and a lot of police misconduct in terms of how police manage the people within this area.
Hmm.
And consequently, there was a $14 million judgment, a class action on behalf of the people of this community.
And
And that's what introduced me to that area of law. But again, I was a law librarian most of my career. As a law librarian, I broke a lot of ground dealing with how law libraries would deal with pro se litigants, pro pers, citizens who want to litigate for themselves, who either don't
well,
trust lawyers, don't trust the system, or can't afford lawyers.
well,
And
I
so,
did a lot of work with prisoners when I was the ACLU director in Utah and Colorado, and they were they all start out as pro se, pretty much prisoners.
yeah, when I
And
worked on my master's of library science in 71 to 72 at Berkeley, there was no thesis requirement, but I dreamt up a thesis. And it was to visit every prison in the state and look at their law libraries, at their libraries and law libraries. And
oh,
so I
that's
met John
amazing.
Van Gelderen, the great jailhouse lawyer, famous one whose work resulted in famous cases, the names of which I can't remember anymore. But I did spend a major part of a day with him. And one day in every one of the institutions, including Frontier, the women's institution. This visiting on that day resulted in a lecture I gave to social responsibility roundtable of the American Library Association, and in a law review article I published in 1975 on human experimentation on prisoners in California and their rights and remedies.
Mhm.
So I was looking at civil remedies, criminal remedies. I mean, I was encountering prisoners who were giving a few cents a week to allow experimentation on their bodies, including ones that would show me a back something attached to their back that was going to be used to test against jungle rot in Vietnam.
Mm.
So we're talking early 70s. I'm looking at prisoners. They're saying, in order to be paroled early, I volunteered to do this. I'm being paid a mere pittance. I've agreed to this. Whereas people in the real world who would agree that these experiments are getting paid real money. So that had a real heavy impression on me. I mean, I stood where George Jackson was shot to death in San Quentin. I spent days and was told story after story, but every one of these institutions,
Yes.
and my remedy that I guess I sought was through this law review article to present what had been done during a certain period in terms of experimentation on California prisoners and what rights and remedies they had to be able to deal with it. But
Yes.
basically, it was an effort to secure early parole that they would volunteer for things like this.
Mhm.
And so that had a great impact on me. I received my master's of library science before I went to law school. My wife, who went to law school with me, was in her third and final year of law school when I was in my first, because I did 5 undergraduate years to earn all my BAs, a year at Master of Library Science at Berkeley, and then I showed up. Now, I do need to talk about her too. She's Ruth Blackwell Herch. She is instrumental terms of the recruitment of minorities and women into law schools.
Yes.
UC Davis was the first law school to have over 50% female population in 1977, which she,
Wow.
having graduated in 73, was responsible for getting that in place. And again, this is Davis, the same place where Schnacky pursued a case against the medical school against, my brain don't fail me now, affirmative action.
Oh,
So
yes.
the
I
big
remember that.
affirmative action case also came out of UC Davis, but out of its medical school, about the same time that I'm, matriculating through its law school.
Wow. Okay. Well, so when in this career did your time in Israel occur?
Okay. It was the longest Match.com date in history. 10 years total, 4 in America, 6 in Israel, with an amazing woman who was a midwife and a war widow. And for that period of time, I was Saba, or grandfather, to 10 grandchildren of hers,
Oh, my
which is
goodness.
the miracle, because 3 out of her 4 children bore her 10 grandchildren after the husband had been killed in the Gaza Strip. But she was a remarkable woman, a woman from Baltimore. The time in Israel was fantastic. I basically managed an international database. Israel is such an incredible country because you have educated and intelligent people from all over the world speaking every tongue who've emigrated to Israel. So I could find lawyers from Germany, Venezuela, Argentina, Canada, different parts of the Middle East. And so we created a database on business record retention requirements for over 200 countries, including all their provinces and states. So it would tell you whether you were in healthcare, as a doctor providing healthcare devices, medical devices, whether you were a auto manufacturer, whether you were involved in auto repair, whatever the profession was, including Liberty Mutual came for us for laws about insurance for all the countries they were practicing in. It was basically as they'll come, ask for the laws for certain countries, and we put them in the database. And we worked with natural language lawyers from each of these countries. So I had Spanish specialists, I had someone who spoke Portuguese, I had all these people. We put this database together. Ultimately, we even had staff out of Mauritius, which is at the foot of South Africa at the Cape.
Yeah.
Where I hate to say they graduated from law school with a bachelor's degree, but we taught them how to do what they needed to do. And Israelis. And finally, they brought me back here at the end of my career to Denver. And so I created teams here for about 4, 5, 6 years as well.
Teams for what? For that project?
To manage this database. So each particular lawyer on the team was responsible for particular countries and working with the lawyers from those countries to put in the laws from their database. My expertise, and I should be richer than I am because I do have this expertise, was the banking laws.
Oh.
And if I want, and I am going to say something, of all the laws I've researched laws from all over the world, all kinds of ways. The banking laws are written in tables, not prose. So it's a table that lists each of the items to be kept, specific types of records, financial records, contractual records, et cetera, how many years they have to be kept. And so often a table for banking records would end up being 200 entries in the database for 200 different types of, and anywhere from maybe 50 or 60 types of records to almost 200. So
That's
I
one.
was the expert on unraveling those tables. But they were written in tables. And it's like, I know of no other body of law that's written in tables other than banking laws.
Interesting.
Nothing,
Huh.
and so that was that was a revelation of sort, to realize that. I miss the food of Israel. I did want to say something about music and art and my love of those things. I loved a particular art museum. I would go to Tel Aviv uh, to see my Alexander Archipenko. Um, he was a great Russian artist. Um, these are collages with wood and paper and metal and sticking out from a
Mhm.
canvas. I used to always go to the National Museum of Art to see what I called my calders. My calders hanging from the ceiling, those great mobiles.
Hmm.
I believe it's William Calder. By the similar token, there was a little museum where I would see 40 miniature Dali sculptures
No.
at a museum in an oceanside town in Israel. They were fantastic. So
Wow.
I was going to see my Calders, my Dalis. I actually do own in my living room a 4x6 stretch canvas, 1940 Salvador Dali, The Slave Market and the Disappearing Bust of Voltaire.
Wow.
It's a little pornographic because it's got that bust. But it's my own Dali, and it's a stretched canvas. It's a print on a stretch canvas.
Well,
You
so
know,
that's pretty close to come and see my etchings.
exactly. I also, my brother was the largest buyer of Beatle collectibles from the Liverpool School of Art auction after he received a $500,000 judgment against Bellevue Hospital for failure to diagnose his cancer. He had
Oh,
cancer in both knees, bilateral symmetrical knee cancer,
oh
which is
no.
another story I'm not going to tell here.
All right.
But I have Beatle collectibles up the Yayut that he's collected. I have the second of 25 uh, portrait of the Beatles standing on the stairs of Brian Epstein's family's record store with their
Mm.
guitars in hand. And that's probably worth a fortune, but I haven't even ever made an effort to see what it's worth. But when he died, I had to liquidate left string Paul McCartney Hofner bass guitar, amongst other things.
I see. Well, so tell us a little bit about this Record Mensch business you have.
Okay, so I have amassed over time a collection of way over 3,000 records. When I moved to Israel, I probably had 4,000. For people who ask, where are your psychedelic 60s San Francisco records? I sold them mostly to the two hippest stores in Jerusalem and Tel Aviv. The Eighth Note and the Third Ear. Be'ivrit in Hebrew, though. Those are the names. I now have about 2,500 records. I have several thousand CDs, a lot of musical DVDs, very deep in blues, both in vinyl and DVD, also in CDs. In terms of jazz, I have Ornette Coleman. I have all the heavies. I have the avant-garde stuff. I have Coltrane. I have Chet Baker. I collected Chet Baker for years and years. Perfect pitch as a singer, wonderful trumpet playing. So that I amassed this collection. I've kept it in such stellar condition that 85-90% of it is in mint condition.
Well,
And I don't know. There's like some of the shelves. The
oh, you got
CDs
the
are behind
LPs
me.
as well.
I the blues is broken down into its separate collections of New Orleans, NOLA. There's over 40 New Orleans-based blues records, Chicago blues, West Coast blues, which is, San Francisco and LA mostly. A lot of transported Chicago guys that came out there. East Coast, New York, Chicago, of course, blues. I was born in Chicago. The greatest thing that ever happened to me is at 1963, age 14, my parents moved me to the San Francisco Bay Area from the south side of Chicago. And I'm allowed to become anybody I want. The nerd from the south side of Chicago can be anybody he wants to be in the 60s in the San Francisco Bay Area. And that's where I blossomed. I was in all school musicals, plays, which hopefully we'll get around to my singing and dancing a little bit here. Also, I know we're trying to cover a lot of ground in a short period of time. But of recent, I'm in 3 choirs here in Denver. I sing with the Rock Choir of Colorado, with whom I did 2 concerts this weekend. I sang songs by Blink 182 and Bare Naked Ladies, which I think I never even knew of these songs, and they were very wordy. For someone singing in a choir, wordy songs are the bane of existence. But you manage. I'm also in the Hebrew Chorale, which is they're putting on a concert this weekend, and also we're doing kind of a unity event with a choir from Colorado Springs. And that's an event where we're talking about issues of diversity, discrimination, and some common areas of concern with a different type of choir. And I've even gone to sing with the Third Day Adventist choir, which a friend of mine has pulled me into, and I think she's going to be pulling me into the Metropolitan Choir this summer. I'm expecting to sing at a baseball game this summer with the Colorado Rockies, amongst other things.
Wow. Well,
And
Frank,
so
I just
I give me a podium, give me a stage. My most recent musical that I performed in was in 2005 with a troupe from NASA that
from NASA.
does music and dramas that they call MADD, music and drama. I don't know what the last D stands for. I don't remember. But these are rocket scientists who dance and sing and act. And I was the newest person to kind of join their fold. They embraced me. I was a villainous Tammany Hall judge in Fiorello, which is the last musical by Sheldon Harnick before he writes Fiddler on the Roof.
Wow.
And I opened the second act singing a song about Jimmy Walker beating Fiorello, which they refused to choreograph. Let me do my thing. Let me sing the song. The entire chorus was behind me dancing, and I know their steps. So I have a basis for what I'm doing. But he was not going to, the director was not going to choreograph me. I knew that. Even though
That
I
sounds
even took dance
so
in high
fun.
school, but it was great fun. And we did 18 supper shows. Me and a bunch of rocket scientists from NASA.
I love it. I love
Can
it.
you imagine?
Well, I can actually.
They can be some very quiet, reserved people. But even during rehearsals, I'm looking at these people, they're reading books on rocket science. They're boning up on what they need to know for work tomorrow. While I'm worrying about my lines.
Well, yes. And
Can I talk about how I've cheated death?
Yes.
My 9 lives?
But here, so just so we sort of make a little break here is talking about when you're retired, right?
Yeah.
So your singing and dancing has been since you retired from your other legal career.
Right.
And
well, my singing and dancing in these choirs here it's what allows me to know that I still have a good brain. that I can still think clearly, that I have a sense of memory. The Hebrew chorale songs have been in Italian, Hebrew, Ladino, which I don't even know what that really is.
It's a Spanish
Um,
variant.
a variety of different languages transliterated, which I think the bane of existence for choir singers is getting through a bad transliterated song. And knowing the correct consonants rather than the ones that are in there, and how to say the vowels right. But the Hebrew chorale is really a challenge in terms of some of the different languages we've had to sing in and work off transliteration. I can read Hebrew, and I'd probably be better off reading it in Hebrew. But the
That is
sheet
a,
music
yeah,
is
yeah,
transliterated, so you deal with it the way they give it to you. So
yeah. So phonetic, yes. Well, the other thing I wanted to just mention is what a contribution you are to the community that you and I live in, the
oh
affinity
yeah,
community at Copperleaf. And you've participated in a lot of things. You've staged
I've stayed
events and
8 nights of Hanukkah. Where I've even had to rely on bringing in videos from Jack Black singing Hebrew Hanukkah songs, or even Passover songs. We just undertook, and happily there are a couple more Jewish people in the building to help me. But the Hanukkah I did on my own the first year. The second year, I realized there were some other Jewish people to work with, and there was basically three of us, three males, who put on a Passover Seder just now. We had brisket. I was trying to emulate my mother's brisket, and the chef
it
did a
was
pretty good
very
job.
good. I remember eating, what a great meal that was.
Oh, and I've been living for my mom's potatoes and the brisket for decades to
And
have
I
it
gotta
again.
say, that chicken noodle soup
Oh,
was
chicken noodle soup with matzo
or
balls.
chicken and matzo ball. It was the best chicken soup I've ever eaten.
And Lois had only done that for the first time for Hanukkah last year.
It
And
was
it came
pretty
out
good.
really well. And so again, I was able to invite her, encourage her to participate and help out. And so there were basically 19 people in attendance and a chair for Elijah,
Yes.
and so it went quite well. Um, I really, I was so worried we weren't going to have enough people. I was buying too much food. We were able to even give away bags of matzah, because I got a real good price on some Israeli made matzah.
Mm.
And so um, I decided, yeah, 5 boxes of matzah for that amount of money. Everyone gets matzah. But it's been a joy for me to be able to share that type of stuff and share the blessings, share the stories, share the history. Um, I have not in my life been a big person about attending synagogues and going with regularity. Nor am I the guy who just shows up on Rosh Hashanah and the high holidays, which is the usual Jewish thing, I think. But it's been
Very
very
similar to
personal
the
to me.
Christians go on Easter and Christmas.
Yeah. And to live in Israel and to see all those places, to have lived in the Galilee, um, it 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 was a miraculous part of my life. It was just really fortunate that I ran into this woman who took me to Israel to be part of her family, to be part of a whole lifestyle. She allowed me to fill the walls of her house with all my record albums and stuff. And to be, part of a real Jewish family, grandchildren, etc. Um, it was terrific. It was a wonderful experience, and I feel very fortunate to have been able to do that in my life. Now,
Yes.
you know that these last couple of years that I've been here, I've also had 4 major surgeries. I am
And
a
your
walking
son,
miracle.
your
I
your son
I
came,
I had
right?
and in fact, my son, who is a nurse, came back from Thailand where he didn't want to live in America anymore. This is an interesting story. My youngest son, I have 2 sons, and also my sons are biracial. They're black. My wife was a black woman. My family, my nuclear family of 4, 2 kids, 2 boys, was my own attestment to the civil rights movement. I always felt, by having a biracial family. I had the kids that I had to warn about. How do you talk to a police officer if he stops you? Stuff like that there. I had to make sure, even though one is blonde hair and blue eyed, the other one is big and brown and muscular. And so that particular son, called Rocky, took care of me after I got over during my 6 months of physical therapy after a shoulder surgery for a rotator cuff and a bicep tear. But prior to that, during the first year of COVID, I had a lung infection, and I do love to tell this story, so I'm going to tell this story. I had a lung infection based on monkey droplets, not bat droplets to human. I lived for the 6 years I lived in Israel, and the 3 or 4 years I was visiting prior to that. I lived within less than a mile from a monkey zoo called the Monkey Forest. It was zoo in my village with monkeys, llamas, horses, um, peacocks, all kinds of animals. The monkeys, the chimpanzees, and baboons were in cages. The 100 families had lived here since the 70s or 80s. I'm the newest guy to arrive in 2009. 2015, I leave, and I have a filmy lung, but they say, "You're fine, Frank, go home." Years later, during the first year of COVID, they take an x-ray of me one day and say, "Frank, you're going to the hospital today," because they say, "We need to drain your lung." So whatever was in my lung, and when they did the culture, they found it was monkey droplets. They want to ask me, were you in caves? Everyone in Israel goes to caves. Caves are iconic locations. You go to caves, they have history. You go look at graves in caves and things like that there.
What?
And
I
so
remember I remember King David in a cave.
oh yeah, but it wasn't caves. I had monkey droplets in my lungs, and it took a couple years for this to fester. I was not feeling any pain or anything, but I had some stomach pain. They took the x-rays. They did my lungs too. That's when they saw I needed to go in the hospital. So this is like the 3rd or 4th month of COVID. I'm in the UC Health, but for something else to be drained from my lungs. I was there for 24 days.
Oh my
By the way,
gosh.
the food at UC Health is very good. This is a plug. Eat the red meat chili. I was even putting that on my eggs in the morning. So after the lung thing, I have a problem with fingers tingling. And I'm a guitarist. I play bass. So all I need is 2. But I'll never be the finger picker I want to be. So ulnar nerve, my funny bone is operated on because that's like your fingers tingle when you hit your funny bone. So I
Right.
had that surgery. Then I had the shoulder surgery. I had a craniotomy. My son Rocky came to be with me for the craniotomy to seal a little aneurysm. So I have titanium in my head. Maybe that's what's making me think clearer. I don't know. So I had brain, shoulder, elbow, lung, and I'm alive. I'm fine. In fact, the craniotomy, I'm up the next day walking and talking. I thought it was going to be debilitated for 2 or 3 days. No.
Wow.
But the
Well,
lung thing did take 24 days.
that's a
And
long
they have a
time.
son who's a nurse who was, I'll go back to a little bit of his story. He was working 2 jobs during COVID, literally 7/12s, was married, but the marriage didn't last. So he decided to go to Europe, made, did well in the house, sale, had money, stayed inexpensively. He's living now for $300 a month in Thailand. And I'm sure has girlfriends galore, you know. Um, Rocky, if you hear this, I'm talking about you.
Well,
He
okay,
came and
Frank.
stayed with me, fed me, and one last thing. He had COVID while he was under my roof here at Affinity. I
Oh,
still never caught COVID. I've never caught COVID. I'm setting a record for 6 or 8 negative COVID tests, I think.
wonderful. Wonderful. Well, okay. So really, this is my last question.
Okay.
What are your hopes and dreams?
Right now, my hopes and dreams are maybe join a couple more choirs, do some more singing. I want to do some a cappella stuff on YouTube
Ooh,
where I'm going to do some unusual songs. Like I'm going to sing Suzanne Vega's Luca, a man singing the song. See, I've always been taken by folk music where a man would sing a woman's story or a woman would sing a man's story. And so I think that that's fine. So I was going to sing some unexpected songs in my baritone, a cappella, create a YouTube page uh, based on a misinterpretation of lyrics in I Am the Walrus, which I won't go any further than that. Well, I will, because my page will be called Waiting for the Band to Come, a
Oh,
cappella.
nice.
Where,
Well, we'll put a link in the show notes.
but the other thing is, I'm working on an autobiography and a couple novels. I've been working on a novel on the Titanic for years. I know more stuff about the Titanic than anyone alive should know, and I hate the fact that they made that stupid movie because that's not the story that should have been told about the Titanic. There's a lot more. To
Well,
some
good.
extent, it's a class struggle story, and my
Yes.
protagonist was in steerage. He was a
Nice.
sports writer for the Boston Globe. And people don't know that people on the Titanic were coming to New York, including John Jacob Astor, to get to Boston for the opening of Fenway Park in a couple of days. Was the intention of
All right.
some of the
Well,
most rich,
I want to see it. I want to see that book.
And then lastly, my novel, Elvis Does Not Die in 1977, through the intervention of another musical icon who's an angel. And
Well, if
that's
there's
where I'm
anybody who
applying my
should
love
be,
of music.
yes. Well, but that's perfect. Angels are perfect for musicians, right?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, I know another choir you might consider joining. So
Oh, what is that?
I'll let you know.
Okay. All right.
All right. Well, thank you so much for being
So I
with
know I
us.
talked a lot.
Well,
I
that's
tend
why
to.
I asked you.
All right.
Thank you, boomers. That's it for today. And look in the show notes for how to reach Frank about all of his wonderful collection of music. If you have a particular interest, something you want to find, get in touch with Frank. And
I also have
we'll try.
collectible T-shirts.
Oh, collectible T-shirts. Okay. So all right then.
This
So
is from a
uh,
pink rally in Washington, D.C.
oh, nice.
But they're
Uh,
political, they're music, they're all kinds of things.
so there you have it. All right, we'll see you again next week. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Hey, boomers, welcome back. I enjoyed doing that interview with Frank. He's been involved in so many things. For me, the takeaway from my conversation with him is that it's never too late to do the things you love to do. And while you can look back on the things you accomplished when you were younger, we still have time. It's the message just is don't wait. Okay, that's it. Check out Frank's store. His store is called the Record Mensch, and it'll be in the show notes how you can get in touch with Frank and find out what he's got in his catalog. That's it for today. See you next week. Bye.